question that said, who would you like to see at the conference this year? And I was like, I want Eric Zink. You know, I've been following Eric for a while. His story is amazing, and it's helped me as well through a lot of the stuff that I've gone through, especially with my mental health. So I am honored to introduce Mr. Zink. Eric Zink, a mental health, suicide prevention, and addiction recovery advocate and speaker. He is an experienced speaker and podcast guest, sharing his story on YouTube series, iHeartRadio, Pacific Coast University, Steve Rumler Hope Network, and Mr. Zink has millions of views and millions of followers on all social media platforms. Inspiring change and helping people who are struggling with their mental health and addiction is his passion. After Eric, his wife, and father all attempted suicide, he was the only one to survive. It gave him a new hope and passion to share the good and bad side of mental health and to help people to learn coping mechanisms. He started by creating a community where people felt safe to talk and ask questions or ask for help, and the response has been overwhelming. He has helped countless people through social media channels, private mentoring, community groups, and talks at schools and on podcasts. The community continues to grow and change as people learn and grow through their mental health and addictions. His goal is to continue to create a community for those struggling and offer resources that he has found to be helpful and allow the community to flourish with testimonials from others in the same or similar situations. Let's give it up for Eric Zink.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad and stoked to be out here. I haven't done one of these in a while, and to be in Little Rock, I have never been here before, so this was a new experience. If you don't know me, who I am, my name is Eric Zink. I'm nothing special, I just happen to share my story just like all of us have stories. And I'm sure your stories are as fucked up as my story is, and that's what makes us all special here. It's just, I have found the power of sharing your story has one major effect on it, and I think that major effect is that we all get sober differently. We all have been through shit, and it allows us to actually validate our shit. Because I think that's one of the biggest problems is, as an addict, and especially for me, which fed my addiction a lot, was people have it worse off than me, and I would never validate my story. I validated everybody else's story. Holy cow, you are strong, you're amazing, I can't believe you did that. But for me, I don't even want to tell mine because mine doesn't matter. And when you realize that you have never been empowered by your story, you're not empowered by your sobriety, almost is what I have found, and it led to a lot of relapses. And so what I ended up doing, and just to give you a little bit of background, but he said I do social media full time. I got a couple million followers on that TikTok app, whatever that is, and Instagram, YouTube, all of that stuff. And I did that by just sharing my story, trying to be as real and raw as I could, and it has blessed me with a life that I didn't think I really deserved, especially in active addiction. I have an amazing wife now, and it has given me the ability that we are able to travel all over. We have a very successful company, and you know, life is really good. And the amazing thing is I look back in active addiction, and everything I have now is everything I wanted then, but I never thought I deserved. And that was one of the amazing things is once you actually get it, you know how to appreciate it, and you know how not to self-sabotage it and to blow it all up. It's amazing what ends up happening in the life that you really start to live. And so to give you an idea of where I have been from, so in 2015, I've been married 5 times. Yes, I'm a professional marriage counselor. I can tell you how to ruin marriages left and right. But in 2015, I lost my wife to suicide. She ended up taking her life August 27th, 2017. Spiraled me really hard into addiction. Later on, 2 years later, I lost my dad to suicide. He committed suicide, a well-known, successful doctor in Michigan. I got luckily diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, GAD, MDD. Those were my diagnoses. I also found out at 40 I had level 1 autism, essentially Asperger's. And I found being just honest and open about that, has made the difference and helped me really understand too my addiction. I didn't realize how much my addiction was based around mental health and around trauma and unhealed trauma. And one of my biggest passions is suicide. And so some of the suicide statistics that people don't realize is during 2020, suicide was really on the downward slope. COVID was happening, and everybody loved everybody, man. We loved our communities. We're all going through this hard time. We're all going through this lockdown. And all these statistics all started dropping because we had that kindness to one another. And then as soon as that all shifted away, it all starts to increase back up. And these are current stats from 2024 when it comes to suicide. And so it really goes to show you that kindness does save lives. Ultimately, when you see somebody out there struggling, no matter what it is, all we want to be is not alone. We only want to feel accepted. We all want to, just have somebody almost acknowledge our existence, because a lot of times we don't even acknowledge our own existence. So, with that said, though, to start, there it is. Oh, well, somewhere in this, I think that's the one. There we are. So, anyhow, starting off with my childhood, I was very privileged growing up. I had a dad who's a really successful doctor. I never acknowledged any of my trauma, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that. Growing up, we all have trauma. We all go through things, and how we accept things is different. I grew up in a household where we always had a roof over our head. We always had food. My dad, again, very successful doctor. And so I was one of those people that would say, my childhood was great. I loved my childhood, would never accept any of the trauma that I was put through in my childhood, such as my parents were notorious for forgetting me places, such as Kmart, Walmart, what they would literally forget me there because their brains were elsewhere. And I didn't realize that actually built a lot of abandonment trauma. None of it made any kind of sense. And my parents were also really big about mental health. And I learned from my dad, who, he ended up committing suicide, so he lied to his therapist. I learned how to lie to my therapist also, and I got into therapy at a young age, and I literally thought it was, this is my friend in a sense, and everything's good, everything's wonderful, life is great, and that's essentially all I got out of therapy for the longest time. I didn't realize that when it comes to therapy, honesty really makes a big difference, and so just like probably everybody else out there, I had a lot of trauma that just kind of carried with me through all of my life. And it just kind of compounded itself because at no given point did I ever acknowledge any of the trauma that I had. At 14, I started drinking. I got diagnosed at 13, I was diagnosed with this new thing called ADD. Didn't know anything about ADD. They gave me this medicine called Ritalin. It did actually make a huge difference. It kind of slowed me down. I didn't realize that people, though, later on they found that are diagnosed with ADHD struggle a lot with alcohol. Because alcohol with somebody with ADHD slows us down, it makes us feel normal, it allows us to think that this is what normal is. My brain is no longer going a million miles a minute, and I feel wonderful. Except the problem is with ADD and ADHD, we also don't know how to regulate. And so we have this very compulsive thing that we don't want to lose this feeling, so it can lead you down to addiction very easily. So at 14, I started drinking. Come along through into high school, and I started using drugs just like everybody else. And hey, cocaine's great, and marijuana's great, and LSD, acid is great. All this stuff is great. And I always just built this thing of, hey, I'm just experimenting, I'm just trying it out. I'm young, I can do this. There's no harm, no foul with this. It's okay. I'll stop this when I decide to, become an adult. Through therapy and everything that whole entire time, and again, in therapy, man, just lying nonstop to my doctors that everything is great, never acknowledging any of my abandonment issues, and all I allow that to do is to now just start compounding through life. Start going into a lot of different relationships. I got married at 19, and that kind of started my divorce streak because it was kind of what you're supposed to do, but then people are going to leave me, and it's amazing what happens when you self-sabotage yourself, because it is this sick, twisted thought process that if I do this myself, I'm in control still. Yet we just damage everything and destroy everything around us, and now we've hurt people that we love, that in return hurts us. So we go to this amazing coping mechanism, which is typically a drug of choice. And we start using that, and it's amazing because that gives us everything we thought that we needed and thought that we wanted. It took me a long time, and it took me forever to learn how to explain to people why we as an addict will love our drug of choice more than anything in the world. We'll love it more than our kids, we'll love it more than our wife, we'll love it more than our family, our job, everything. And to somebody who is saying this doesn't make any sense, like how can you love the substance? And through a lot of different therapists and people I've talked to, I've found that the best way to answer it is drugs are safe to us. It will not change. It's not going to hurt us. It will not emotionally hurt us. The amazing thing is I know with this substance, when I use this, it's going to give me this feeling. It's not going to judge me. It's not going to shame me. It's not going to make me feel bad. Any of this. And it becomes this just twisted obsession. So unfortunately, I started to self-medicate a lot. At an early age, in my 20s, got diagnosed with MDD, which is major depressive disorder. They said there was something wrong with my brain and how it worked, and I'd go through these really depressive episodes. And then I also got diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. I was like, great, so I'm collecting diagnoses here. For a long time, I allowed those to define me, and then I realized that later on, you don't really have to let those define you. You can be empowered by those. And you can say, hey, this is the shit that I've been through, and here's where I'm at now, look what I've overcome. I can overcome this, so can you. But you also can build the empathy to realize that, hey, just smiling and shaking it off doesn't work though either. So I ended up getting diagnosed with those, and throughout my whole life, the one consistency I had was my addiction. And so through my first divorce, my first wife said that she was going to divorce me because I was an alcoholic. I thought that was a lie, so I went to AA. I was 23 years old, and this is when I first tried to get sober. So I went to AA, and AA failed me. Failed me after 3 months because I read this book, and at the end of the book, there's these stories, and I read that first story, and it talks about this guy who was an addict, and he got sober from alcohol, and his wife returned, and all this stuff. His life got better. My life wasn't getting fucking better. My life was getting worse. And so this book fucking lied. And I'm in the car with an employee of mine, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna get a bag. We're at a bar, and I'm like, all right. You know, I'm at a low point in my life. Let's get a bag. And I do coke for the first time since high school. And for some weird reason, it hit different this time. Because I was at a low point. And the scariest side effect for me for cocaine is that it was amazing. For 20 minutes of my life, I had big mood energy. I felt unstoppable. My depression went away. My anxiety went away. Everything went away. Life was calm. Life was complete. I was happy. Holy shit, I have found it. Until about 15 minutes later, it dropped me, and I decided I needed more because I wanted the feeling back. And I never really, the stigma around cocaine is that it's a safe drug, it's a party drug. You don't see cocaine addicts underneath the overpass with needles in their arm. You don't see cocaine addicts in Portland standing in the corner doing the nod. Cocaine addicts are in Hollywood, and they're successful business people and all of this. You don't realize that, once they lose it all, they're going to do crack, and they're going to other substances, and they actually are homeless. So I thought it was a very safe drug. Little did I know later on, it'd get to the point I was doing about 1 to 2 8 balls of coke a day. I used to be a professional microdosing with 99 bananas too, because I wasn't alcoholic, so I figured if I got the little shooters, those were just fine. So throughout all this, the biggest problem I always had was I would never hit rock bottom. I was really good at what I did. I dropped out of college, I hated school, I hated everything. I found with having autism, we all kind of almost have a special gift. I couldn't draw worth a shit or anything of that sort, but God, I could sell. And I was an amazing salesperson, and I all of a sudden became great at sales. And next thing you know, I'm running RV dealerships. Yeah. And I don't know, people I don't think really realize the money that is in some of this stuff. And here I am, 21 years old, 22 years old, going through a divorce. I'm making 6 figures. I'm making more money than what my dad as a doctor was making. I found out about RV sales. I go into RV sales, and man, I'm making, 23 years old, I'm making $25,000, $30,000 a month. Holy shit, I have made it. The amazing thing is when you're an addict, it doesn't matter how much money you make because you don't have any money. My dealer was nice enough towards the end that he would take my Rolexes in on pawn. And then I could buy them back from him every month, and then just to turn around a couple weeks later and give them back to him. It was kind of a perpetual cycle. But you know what? I was amazing at this. I thought that, hey, this is where I need to be. This is great. Life is wonderful. I was a functioning addict. And on and off, I was like, man, maybe life will be a little bit better if I got sober. Because the one thing, I didn't feel I was necessarily destroying my life. I could hold a job. I was very good at what I did. I always had a roof over my head. I went through a bunch of relationships, a lot of toxicity. I didn't realize that all this just kind of compounded in these firm beliefs of trauma and everything else. But hey, you know what? Life is all right. And every now and then I try to get sober because I think, man, if I got sober, maybe life would get a little bit better. Because for some reason, I don't ever have any money. I make all this money, but I don't have any money. Don't realize really where it's going, but hey, that's okay. And this is literally my 20s is a blur. I don't remember a lot of my 20s because all I did was use and I went to work. That's all I did. Well, in 2010, I met my third wife. Her name was Brandy. And I was running a dealership in Yuma, Arizona for part of the year. And to know anything about Yuma, Arizona, it's right next to Mexico, and it is a hole of holes. But there's one amazing thing about it. All the Canadians go down there because they can go right over the border to Mexico and get really free dental work and some real free health care, cheap health care. And so I was down there and I ended up meeting her, and the one consistency I had and why a lot of my relationships had failed is they were never addicts. Well, this was the first time now I got into a relationship with another addict. And that kind of changed everything. I met somebody who had attempted suicide before. She had been addicted to meth before, and we ended up getting together. Well, I wasn't an alcoholic, I just liked to drink a lot. She just liked to drink a lot. It was fun to use cocaine every now and then. She liked benzos because it helped the anxiety, even though they weren't from a doctor or therapist or with any kind of guidance. But hey, who am I to judge? And so we ended up getting together, and of course we fell in love. And I will admit, like, she did become my best friend. I did love her tremendously. But this is where it all started to change. We ended up moving back to California. We settled down there, running an RV dealership. Just her and I didn't really know many people out there. And I've always struggled making friends. I always struggled with connecting with people. I always would meet people. And I'd say it was social anxiety because I was like, man, I'm just nervous and anxious to like meet people. Later on, I realized it's not necessarily do I have social anxiety. I actually don't have social anxiety. But when you have ADHD, you have a heightened rejection sensory. We know that something's not right with us. We struggle making friends. We struggle communicating. When you have autism of any level, you have trouble reading the room. You have trouble connecting with people. You'll say and blurt out stuff that will sometimes not be appropriate, and people will think you're being an asshole. There's a lot that goes on, and you know that something's wrong, so drinking makes it all normal. And so, put us in a new environment where we don't know anybody, we start drinking more and more. And we start using more and more, and we start going on planned benders. I don't know if anyone in here has ever planned out benders. I used to plan out all my benders. As a functioning addict, I wasn't excited for the days off. I was just excited because I'm gonna go lock myself into our fucking house for the next 2 days, and all we're gonna do is use. We're gonna fucking use nonstop. We're gonna get drunk as fuck, and that's all we're gonna do. That to me didn't seem insane. That to me seemed normal. That seemed fun. I mean, I thought everybody did that. We didn't travel. We didn't do anything. We literally went on benders. And this was my life for a couple years, and it was weird because I thought I could really control it, and it didn't make sense why we couldn't control it. Why did it always get worse? Because we didn't drink anymore for taste. We drank for percentages. We wanted the highest percentage, the quickest we could get fucked up, the easiest we could get fucked up. And that was the only thing that mattered to us. The drugs didn't matter if it was cut. You know, you'd get stuff and you're like, wow, that color just doesn't look quite right, but hey, that's okay. Why am I snorting this and it feels like glass shards up my nose and it's burning my entire face? And this drip doesn't taste quite right, and now my wife is pissing her pants thinking that the cops are going to break in the door. Don't know. I thought it was coke. Why would the dealer lie to me? They're supposed to be my friends. It was amazing how many people fucking lie to you as an addict, man. I mean, are you sure this is the good shit you're selling me? Yeah, okay. It's blue for a reason. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to question that. And it was always something I would have under control, and it would be funny because even then, I would go, you know what, I'm gonna get sober. And during this whole time, still, I'm running RV dealerships. I'm literally making $20, $15, $30,000 in a month, running these large departments. All these people's jobs depend on me. Drunk as fuck every morning, and people became to just know me as that's how I was. If I ever went to work sober, people thought I was actually high, or they thought I was drunk. Because with enough using, I've realized I could manipulate everyone into thinking that was how I was. I was just insane. And it would dawn on me every now and then, and I'd be like, wow, okay, well, let me try and get sober. Maybe life's going to get a little bit better, and I can actually progress in life instead of just always kind of slipping backwards. And so I get sober for about 90 days. Well, that doesn't work when you live with an addict who doesn't want to get sober, so that would last for 90 days, and then, this time it's going to be different. I've changed. I'm a changed man. Didn't really do anything different. I just went to these meetings. I didn't talk in these meetings. I did introduce myself. I did collect my chips. I did put $1 in the hat passed around. Didn't have a sponsor because I didn't need one of those. I was smarter than sponsors. I made more money than sponsors. It was really weird because I didn't realize how my trauma affected me, and I would default to life and success and everything to money because, wow, it was really amazing of how it was a core belief formed from a young age that money dictated success, dictated relationship, dictated everything because that's what my parents instilled in me. So I would always fall back to my previous things of, oh, well, I'm successful, I'm better than this, I'm better than everybody else, feed this ego, and keep going at it. And I would just keep relapsing after relapsing after relapsing. And finally, it got to the point, my first eye-opener, which was not rock bottom for me, it took me a long time to get to rock bottom. Found out we all have different rock bottoms, believe it or not. I didn't realize that. I thought it was kind of, we follow this one path and we all hit that same rock bottom, but it doesn't really work that way. My first eye-opener, though, that maybe this addiction thing is a little bit of a problem, is my wife, Brandy, all of a sudden started kind of forgetting what day it was. And she'd forget that I was at work, and she would just text me, hey, where are you at? And I would be like, well, I'm at work. And she'd be like, oh, when did you leave? Will you pick up some Jägermeister on the way home, and we need more beer and all this. And I would get home, and her sleep schedule had shifted. Didn't really realize she wasn't eating, and she came down with something that was called Wernicke's-enopathy. I don't know if anyone knows what Wernicke's-enopathy is, but it's when your brain depletes itself of thiamine and B vitamins. You start to get these black spots in your brain. It really kind of, it comes across almost like dementia. You lose your balance, you forget what day it is, you forget who you're around. But something wasn't right with her, I knew that, and talking to everybody, they're like, go to ear, nose, and throat specialist because she probably has a tooth infection or she has some kind of infection problem. Okay, that makes sense. We're still drinking and everything nonstop. That can't be the fucking alcohol. I'm not going to tell anyone we're drinking nonstop. So we go to ear, nose, and throat specialist, and he cannot find anything wrong. He's throwing antibiotics at us. Didn't realize if you do drink, by the way, with antibiotics, they don't work the same too. Didn't know that one. But we ended up getting into a fight because he explained to me that she has no infections. There is nothing medically wrong in this whole area. And I said, no, there's something definitely wrong. So he's like, okay, to prove it to you, we'll do an MRI. So we go and we do an MRI. We get her into the MRI. She doesn't even know where she's at this time. She's just kind of wobbling around like, where am I? And this is a progressive over a couple months. And I'm helping her take out her tongue ring and stuff because you can't have any metal in these machines. And they do the MRI. And next thing you know, we're getting ready and the tech comes out and he goes, you need to stop everything. The emergency room's right over there. You need to take her over there. You know, why is that? And they're like, there's black spots all over her brain. There is something wrong. But this is what we kind of almost think it is. Do you guys drink a lot of alcohol by chance? It's like, yeah, we drink. It's like, a lot? Oh, what do you mean by a lot? Turned out we drank a lot of alcohol. I didn't realize that. So we go to the emergency room. Next thing you know, she gets diagnosed with Wernicke's-enopathy. They keep her there for 5 or 6 days. She tells them that she's an alcoholic. Next thing you know, because we were supposed to. And it's amazing. They put you on like 24-hour watch when you're an alcoholic and you go into a hospital. I guess it can kill you. Didn't realize that one. And so they're observing her, they start pumping her full of B vitamins, and she's starting to walk and come coherent again and all that. Wonderful, they discharge her out. You think for most people that'd be a wake-up call. We were drinking again 3 weeks later, because O'Doul's didn't taste quite the same as regular beer. It didn't give you that same effect, but it did give me something really weird. Is it gave me that placebo effect, thinking, man, if I could drink O'Doul's, I could drink regular beer and be normal. That lasted real quick. Next thing you know, we end up, I'm like, man, we're gonna kill ourselves. We're going back down the same path. I'm back to drinking a fifth vodka a day. Nothing like a shower here to start the day off. Nothing like your local liquor store because they recognize you. I already have it out. My whole thing every morning, man, get a bottle. I always get sugar-free Red Bull though because I was really cared about my health and cared about so I'm gonna drink sugar-free Red Bull. Don't mind the 2 packs of Marlboro 100 that I'm gonna buy and everything else. But I finally was like, man, you know what? This is not right. Something finally dawned on me then. This is not right. So we need to do something. So we're gonna change it up. I looked at her. I'm like, we need to separate. We are toxically codependent. I know you're not supposed to be drinking, but you asked me for alcohol, and I will always bring it home. I will not tell you no. I don't know how to not be toxically codependent. And alcohol obviously is killing you, and so odds are one of us is going to die, if not both of us are going to die if we go down the same path. And so we end up separating. I drive her back to Yuma, Arizona, where her mom lives, hoping that she'll get sobered up. I stay in Orange County, where I'm a sales manager at an RV dealership, and we just kind of stay in touch, and for a while, life just kind of goes on. I stay in touch with my wife. I just continue drinking. And you know what? I'm okay with this life, I figure myself. I'm all right with this. And, I just do coke now every now and then. I'm not doing as much as I was. I kind of cut back a little bit on the drinking. So everything seems like, hey, it's okay. I, again, have this under control. Go to a couple meetings. I don't need these meetings anymore because I have this under control. Little did I know it would all go to shit really fucking quick, because ends up what happening is, and let's see if this is the right one. I have no idea what one. Oh, there we go, the addict. So what ends up happening is I get a call, and my wife, or Brandy I should say, days leading up to this, I took a new job, a place called Dennis Dillon RV, opened up their dealership for them in Westminster, California. Love having my morning beers and stuff still, love doing all that, a couple bumps every now and then. Unfortunately in RV sales, drugs is really, really, really prevalent. I know what it's like to have salesmen who are really good salesmen, because it's amazing every addict's a really good salesman. I think we know how to manipulate people, we know how to lie to people, we know how to get what we want. It's really fucking amazing our ability we have to actually change a room and to get what we want out of anybody if we want it bad enough. And so they just naturally flock to sales. And so, it wouldn't be uncommon for my salesmen to come from meth benders and be passed out or bailing them out of jail. But I'm out running Dennis Dillon RV, and a couple days before this, my wife and I were talking, and I filed for divorce and everything. And she goes, you don't have to worry about any of this. I've made it a lot simpler for us. So I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, I made it a lot simpler. She goes, if you get a call from the Yuma County Sheriff's Department, just do me a favor and pick up the phone. Like, pick up the phone, why? Oh, don't worry about it, just pick up the phone. It makes it a lot easier. All right. We're texting back and forth. She sends me a couple, we used to sit, I don't know if anyone else has ever done this, where you kind of communicate through songs, where you're sending each other back and forth through songs. I think it's one of those like undertones in a relationship that we all do that. So I'm getting these songs from her, and none of it's really connecting with me too much of what these songs really are. And it was a Friday, and I am at Dennis Dillon RV. We finally fully opened up. I'm sitting back, I'm drinking a little bit at work. Life is good, and I'm making tons of money. And I get this call from the Yuma County Sheriff's Department. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, man, I haven't talked to Randy in like 2 days. So I text her, and I don't get a response back. And I'm like, she told me if the Yuma County Sheriff's Department calls to pick up, and I'm like, you know what, she probably got a DUI. So I call them back, and I'm like, hi, I got a call from this number. My name is Zink. And the number that was there, the guy introduced himself as a sergeant or whatever, and he goes, you know, I was calling Mr. Zink to inform you, we have found your wife's body. And they're like, she has committed suicide. And I was like, she has what? And they're like, yes, she has committed suicide. We need you to come out, we need you to identify her body. We are putting it into autopsy right now. And I'm like, oh, all right. And that was about as far as I went, and I said, you need to call her mom. And I gave them her mom's information, number, she was in Yuma. And I hung up the phone, and I remember I just kind of stood there and was like, what the fuck do I do now? Because I had to be the strong one. I was ingrained as a kid not to really share our emotions very much. And so, to be the strong one, I am going to hold all of this in, and I'm not going to share it. And it's amazing how many men and women out there do this, where we will bottle it all inside because we have to be the strong one for who I don't fucking know. Because the worst thing I have found about us being the strong one is we lead such a bad example to everyone else who is affected that their emotions aren't valid because we're not validating our emotions, so why should they share their emotions if mom and dad or whoever isn't sharing their emotions? Yeah. Really fucked up. But I bottle it all in and it went to shit. I end up driving out to Yuma and I just start drinking. And I didn't want to go to therapy. I didn't want to go to anything. I didn't need therapy. I went there, I read her suicide notes, I got them, I found out if you do commit suicide, by the way, and you leave a note behind, guess what? Your loved ones don't get that note. They may not be nice to you and make a copy of it. That all goes into an actual file. You don't get to see the bodies right away because it's not nice and pretty as you would think almost it would be. And I ended up going to the church where they had moved the body to, set up all the things, I do everything she asked for in the suicide note. It turned out, you know, she wanted it all to be cheap, all this stuff, and I actually shared her suicide notes that she had shared with me, and I share them on social media, not for any kind of sympathy or empathy, but because a lot of people relate, because the most amazing thing ever is she wasn't religious, but at the very end, she asked God for forgiveness. In the very end, all she talks about is being alone, and it's amazing what happens when we are alone and we are not shared. Because I can say from hindsight is 2020, yeah, the signs were there, but at no point did she ever say, hey, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm at. She might have thought she did, I might have thought either she did, or didn't, I don't know, but she never really did. And I know this because later on in life I attempted suicide, and we get in a really weird state of mind. But it gets to even the point that I'm watching my wife's body falling out when we have a viewing for her. And so I decided, instead of going to therapy, instead of taking my ADHD meds, instead of doing any of that, you know what's never hurt me was drinking. And man, that numbed everything. So I'm going to go back to that. And next thing you know, my drinking goes from a couple shower beers, maybe a 12-pack a day, maybe a pint a day, right to a fifth a day. So I wake up and I just start drinking. And then I start microdosing alcohol because I'm not an alcoholic. And I lived in Huntington Beach, California. There was a 7-Eleven right on Beach Boulevard. And they carried 99 bananas. And they carried the little shooters. And I was like, man, I started off I'll buy a couple of these because I'm not an alcoholic. They're just little bottles. I didn't realize a case of those is actually a fifth. That 7-Eleven started carrying cases of 99 bananas for me. And I would buy one every single morning. And in the span of 3 months, it went from one case of those to a case of those and a fifth of Blue UV to a case of those, a fifth of Blue UV, a fifth of Patron on the way home, to I'm drinking so much that I'm almost passing out when I get to work, so I need something to offset this. There's this really amazing substance out there that I've always enjoyed in life and I can afford, that I realized if I did this with the alcohol, I felt somewhat normal. So I start buying more and more Coke. And at this point, I'm making $50,000 a month. At the peak of my addiction, I was spending $20,000 a month on Coke and alcohol alone. I don't know how I'm still fucking here. I do know that I've driven down Beach Boulevard on the opposite side of the road trying to get pulled over for DUI, hoping for some divine intervention. I don't own a gun because when I would get so fucked up, if I owned a gun, I would have splattered my brains all over the wall. And I knew that in some weird sense of my brain. And I just became obsessed with using it to the point that I would show up to work drunk, pull into my parking spot, and I would just start doing rails of coke before I'd go in and do a manager's meeting at about 8 in the morning. And so while people are drinking cups of coffee, I'm doing lines of cocaine, chasing my 99 bananas with my sugar-free Red Bulls. And I would go hold a manager's fucking meeting, and I would hold a sales meeting, and I would hold and run a fucking dealership making millions of dollars a month, high as fuck, and nobody could catch on, and I didn't understand how they couldn't. Later on, I found out that they knew that something was wrong, but I was really good at what I did on autopilot, apparently, so they didn't complain. And that's pretty toxic alone. So I get to the point I'm doing 2 to 3 fifths of vodka a day. I'm snorting 1 to 2 8 balls of coke a day. And I have to say 8 balls of coke because most people don't realize the gram measurements. Because I actually went and said, hey, I would go buy pounds of coke at a time. People don't comprehend how much money that is, and that was really easy to do. So I thought it was the easiest way to relate. And I ended up hating my life so much that I just medicated through her suicide. It got to the point that I ended up getting married because I kind of fell into a marriage where the girl I was dating and engaged to came down with melanoma. I had really good insurance and she didn't have any insurance, so I married her for insurance and she's cancer-free still. So good for her, but I shouldn't have gotten married. I didn't want to be alone, even because everybody who I loved all of a sudden kept leaving me. My wife just left me. The amazing thing was my wife left me 10 days after my birthday. My birthday's August 17th. And so on the 27th, she killed herself. And I'm like, fuck, man, that kind of fucked me up. I didn't realize I needed this, because I didn't need therapy, by the way. Therapy doesn't really work. I mean, I went to a therapist a few times after this, and all I did was lie to them, and they're like, wow, you're really handling this great. Yeah. You should tell that to the bottles in the back of my fucking car. But yeah, I lied to them. And so this was my medication now all of a sudden. And I was getting to, not only did I have a toxic marriage where I didn't want to leave this marriage, so I continued it, I was sleeping with everybody else too, because I had to fill these voids. I had to self-medicate the best that I could. And of course, addicts want to use with addicts. I'm not going to use with my wife, because she doesn't really use. She's going to be a waste of my cocaine. So next thing you know, you're finding people that you can use with also, and you're lying to your wife, you're lying to everybody around you. And I would find myself literally at hotels with our receptionist, who was like 20 at the time, doing rails of coke and on benders and sex benders, all that benders. And I literally, all I wanted to do was just die. And so for about 2.5 years, this is all I did. And I don't know why I was still here. And I still had never hit rock bottom. I lost my fucking life to suicide. Still hadn't hit rock bottom. And finally, I get fired from this job. I got fired as a general manager, and that kind of sucked. That was a lot of money. And so, man, I think it's kind of time to come clean with everybody. I don't want to tell them I'm a coke addict because no one will believe me, because no one can get addicted to coke. So, I quit. I'm going to quit. That's what I'm going to do. So I get fired. I tell everybody I got fired because it's not my fault. It's not that they caught me sleeping with the receptionist and I was doing blow at work nonstop, and they caught me doing blow at work, and everything else I was doing because it wasn't my fault. As an addict, nothing is our fault at all. We have learned that one. And I decide now I'm going to quit. I'll just tell everybody I'm an alcoholic, and let's kind of see where this goes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get sober for 6 months. That's my goal. If I can get sober for 6 months, I can relapse. I already had it down. I'm going to relapse. I didn't ever really want to get sober. I'm going to relapse after 6 months. I got this, motherfucker. We got this. All right, I'm calling up everybody. I'm proud of it. I'm an alcoholic. What do I do? Oh, go to a meeting. All right, I'm going to go to these meetings. Where are the meetings at? Oh, all right, I'm going to go to this one. Start going to meetings. I get another job as a sales manager. Man, talking to my parents, because it's amazing. My parents always used to laugh. I had a weird relationship with them, and I loved them, but had a weird relationship. I moved out at 18. I just didn't want to be controlled. But I'd always reach out to my parents when I was hurting, not when I was doing good. When I was doing good and addiction was good, and money was good. My parents wouldn't ever hear from me. They always knew that I was doing good until things went to shit. And what did I do? Who was the first person I'd go to manipulate? My fucking parents, because they would always send me money. They would give me everything I fucking needed. They would enable me. They didn't know the difference between enabling and supporting. And I was really good at pulling money out of them. So I started calling them up. I'm separated from my now ex-wife at the time, and I'm talking to my dad every single day and stuff. My dad's getting ready to retire as a doctor. Talking to my mom, you know, I'm the victim of life. None of this is my fucking fault, you know. It's my wife committed suicide. You guys don't get the pain that I'm in. Any of this bullshit. And it's all going as planned. I get a new job, start making money, start going to AA. Wow, this is great, dude. You know, for some reason I could always pull myself out of this. I didn't know how and why. Next thing you know, 3 weeks go by. I'm 3 weeks sober. Proud of myself. Dude, I got this. No coke. I'm still not going to tell anybody I'm a coke addict because that's embarrassing. Everybody now knows I'm an alcoholic. I was really, really open about being an alcoholic. And I went to a meeting. I got my 24-hour chip. It was a Sunday. It was August 13th, 2017. Got my 24-hour chip, and I went over to my ex-wife's place. That used to be my place, but I got kicked out because I was an alcoholic and we destroyed relationships. So we were dating and stuff kind of at the time, see if this was going to work out, whatever. I'm over there and I'm cooking, and I get a call from my brother. He lives in Michigan. I live in California. It's a 3-hour time difference. And this phone call comes in at like 10 at night. So that's like 1 in the morning in Michigan. I'm like, what the hell? Maybe it's pocket dial, click it through. Get another call from him, click it through. Get another call from him, click it through. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, something's wrong. My brother normally doesn't call me. Something's not right. So I pick up the phone, call him back, and gets on the phone. He's like, hey, I want to let you know, Dad died. I'm like, oh, awesome. So now my dad's died. I probably had a heart attack. He's under a lot of stress. Now, he killed himself. My dad committed suicide. He went to Walmart, bought a paring knife, sliced his wrist, sliced his neck, and put the knife in his chest. He was supposed to go out and play golf with my brother and his nieces. No suicide note, no nothing. Massive amount of trauma. Way to go, Dad. 4 days before my fucking birthday, everyone I love leaves me. Built so much trauma in me, I didn't even realize it. Built mad abandonment trauma. So, wow, all right, just lost him. What the fuck do I do? I start to scramble for anything I could hold on to for reality. And I knew how I medicated through my wife's suicide. My dad actually helped me through her suicide a lot. And now he's not here to help me through his. There's no closure, there's no note, there's no anything. And the last time I talked to my dad, he was laughing on the phone with me, talking about how I was going to talk to him on Monday. Because I talked to my parents because I was, again, at that point where you start reaching out to your family every single day. And so I like, yeah, I'm going to give you the weekend. I gave him the weekend and he took his life. So I'm like, what do I do? So I latched on to anything and everything that I could. And I latched on to one of them was my sobriety. Because that was one of the few things I had before my dad killed himself. And I share this because we all get sober for different reasons. I didn't want to get sober. I got sober because I hated my fucking dad all of a sudden. Because I was going to prove him wrong. Because I'd always relapsed, I'd always gotten sober, so I'm going to prove this motherfucker wrong. And so that's what I do. And I became obsessed with my sobriety all of a sudden. But it wasn't the healthy way or even almost the right way. And I don't think there is a right or wrong way. Because the problem was I didn't realize this trauma now that I had all built up inside of me. All this bullshit built up inside of me. I didn't relapse. Was able to make it through that, man. Flew up there, started talking to my mom, started rekindling my relationship with my mom, started actually enjoying the sober life, started enjoying meetings, started sponsoring, just started thriving in this sober life. I started having money saved, constantly just one day at a time. I'm looking up at him going, see, I fucking told you so, I could get sober. But man, I just wasn't happy still. I still hated my life. But I was sober. And it's really weird when you get sober and you hate your life, but you're sober? You're not going to use, because you told yourself you're not going to use, but you hate your fucking life. So now you just kind of, like, I don't know if anyone's ever done it, you kind of like paddle through life, not sure where you're going, what you're fucking doing, because you hate it. God, man, with all my heart and soul know how to numb this, but I'm not going to do it because I told myself I wasn't going to. And it was almost like this really weird thing that I thrived off of the pain. It was almost like this weird form of like self-harm. Like I thrived off of this, like I'm not going to do this. And next thing you know, I realized that as I'm growing through this sobriety that, you know, I hate my marriage, I hate my wife, I hate everything about my life. So I finally get to this point that I'm like, man, I need to start making changes. And I take to social media, I start sharing on social media as a sounding block. And it's amazing, social media is one of the most powerful tools there is. If you are any kind of counselor, anything with addiction, man, the more that you share your story on social media, it does amazing things. You help out a lot of people. It does one amazing thing for you too. Takes your ego and puts it through the fucking roof. All of a sudden you go, you think you know the high of a drug. Man, how about the high of 1 million people just saw this video? The weird thing is, just like cocaine and dopamine tolerance and all this, social media does the same thing. That man, you were so excited about this, that now it has to get to this. And now when it hits this again, it's not the same feeling, it has to be better. It fed my ego tremendously. And next thing you know, I'm getting divorced. I divorced my wife, I leave, I'm still in the RV industry. I'm in Arizona now at the time, going through now a divorce. I get a job offer to move to Boise, Idaho, so I move up to Boise, Idaho. Not sure what I'm even going to do with my life. I'm like, you know, fuck it, I'm hitting the reset button at 40. I've been sober now for a couple years, sweet, just muddling still through life, hate my life, trying to make these changes. Wish I would have dug in, and the biggest thing that I had missed is I never went to fucking therapy. So I have all my trauma, all this stuff still built with me, and I move up to Boise. I meet my wife now. I give her mad props because she's the only woman I ever met that locked horns with me and got me to actually go back to therapy. So I get up to Boise and I end up deleting all my social media, deleting all that stuff, and I'm just like, you know, I hate my life. Like I can lie to people left and right and be like, man, life was amazing, life was all this, and life was not. And it was so difficult even when I first got sober that we don't take into account this mental health. I lost a wife and father to suicide, and in 2018, and I forgot to say this, I attempted suicide in August. I tried to kill myself, tried to drink, tried to hang myself. I had it all set up, and unfortunately I had frozen vodka in the freezer. My ex-wife had dumped out vodka that was in the freezer and put water in it because she thought I was going to relapse. But even after everything I'd been through, man, just still did not like life until finally I got into therapy, and I finally got into trauma therapy. And never underestimate the power of fucking therapy to address your trauma, to address what you've been through, to find out why you've done the things that you've done. And isn't it amazing what happens when you actually put these pieces together and realize that, man, when I can now address my trauma and it no longer, I hate the word trigger, but it no longer brings up these rushes of emotions and stuff that it once did, and I can own it and I can share it without breaking down or without a desire to use or a desire to numb it, and I can share it, make it through sharing it, and then smile and be proud that I shared it. You're like, wow, you really start to take control of it. And that was one of the most amazing things ever. I mean, as an addict, I thought I had it under control. I thought that this substance gave me everything I needed, but in reality, I started medicating, when I look back, so hard for things that my addiction caused for me. And I medicated for my addiction. I medicated to stop my thoughts. Where all of a sudden it was amazing that, man, through therapy, I realized that we all kind of do get sober different ways. Because I was 5 years sober. I went back to AA. My wife now, we were actually separated at the time. And I was getting my 5-year chips, sobbing in fucking AA. Going, I'm here and I'm sober still, but I hate my fucking life. And I don't know why. I need a sponsor. I've got a sponsor again. All of this started through the steps again. And when I talked to my sponsor, started telling what he goes, what kind of therapy you've been through, and I had been through it, and he said, you need to get to a therapist. And that's what got me into therapy. And then I started, after that, even realizing that, man, we all get sober different ways. There's no cookie cutter way to get sober. And like when we get sober, you kind of latch on and almost set ourselves up sometimes, I think, for failure because we're like, man, if I do this, 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 and this, I get sober. And it doesn't work that way because we all got sober different ways. I went back on my ADHD meds, and some people will look at me and I get into a lot of fights with ADHD meds. Because I take 10 milligrams of Adderall between 7:30 and 8 a.m. I take 10 milligrams of Adderall between 12:30 and 1 p.m. I have to set my alarm because I forget to take my meds a lot. And it's amazing if I don't take my meds, what happens is I found that that's how I always went back and coped with alcohol and cocaine. Because that slowed me down, it made me feel normal. I have something that I forget to take. But it can help me if I do take it. But yet, if I go into certain rooms, they'll tell me I'm not sober. And that's where I believe that we all get sober different ways. When my dad committed suicide, my psychiatrist put me on Xanax. Benzos, highly addictive, affects the central nervous system. I was on Xanax for about a month and a half, as needed, because I'd had panic attacks. Didn't realize panic attacks came from massive trauma. Massive trauma, losing dad to suicide. A month and a half after that, worked with my doctor, made sure I was off of that. So it was amazing what happened if you actually use these as tools and didn't abuse them. And it was also really interesting on how I could use certain things as tools, but other things I would abuse. But you learn that about yourself, and you learn that that's how we all do get sober in different ways. And I started social media back up, and I decided I was going to do this again. I was going to have fun with it. My wife kind of inspired me to. And I will say, the last 2 years of my life have been fucking unbelievable. And it hasn't even been that long. People are like, man, if you could go back and get sober, sooner, would you fuck them? Because I literally have loved the last 2 years of my life so much that I would not ever want to change it. And I finally, even this year, where we went to Europe, and we saw Taylor Swift in Hamburg, Germany, and I created this life with my wife that I've always dreamed of, that I was never worthy of. And for once, instead of fucking just taking it and destroying it and taking it and self-sabotaging it, I actually took it and enjoyed it and said, yeah, but you know what, I do deserve this. But that took a lot of therapy to do, because so many of us, we've done so many horrible things to so many different people, so many horrible things even to ourselves, that when we do get something good, we feel we don't deserve it, so the only control we have is to fucking ruin it. And it is amazing what happens when you change that mindset back around. Then you're like, no, motherfucker, I earned this shit, and I've done this, and this is mine, and you take pride in it all of a sudden. And it's no longer any kind of ego, it's almost like contentment, and it's almost like happiness. And you're like, this is what it really means to be happy, holy shit. And so, if I could share anything with anyone, is the fact of, find your way to sobriety, find your own way, because our way is all different. There's so many people's stories out there that is amazing. So many people who've gotten sober, who have attempted suicide, so many people who have lost people to suicide, so many people who deal with trauma. All this shit that, man, you hear them validate their story, but start validating your own story. Because that was the one thing that I could never do, and that therapy helped me do, is finally validate my story that, holy shit, yeah, I have been through a lot. And it's okay for me to say it. It's not, I don't have to now blow it off anymore and say, you know what? And it's not really that bad, other people had it worse. And it's amazing then that you can create and do whatever you want to do, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world, is you can literally create whatever you want with a clear head. And I will say this, as addicts, we as addicts are the most amazing business owners, the most amazing salespeople, the most amazing individuals, because we have literally pulled ourselves out of hell and back into the light. And that is the beauty of it. And if you don't acknowledge that, you're not going to hit that full potential that you can totally hit. That's totally there for you, that you can do whatever you want. That's why you do see some of these people who own all these different rehabs, and these people with very successful businesses that were addicts, because they finally got to the point that they could own it. And that is so much through just going to the therapy, to getting the support and the help that you need, and to then setting goals, learning how to actually live life sober instead of living life numb. And that's the biggest joy and the biggest beauty, is that life does really become beautiful again. It got to the point that I decided, hey, I'll do social media and grew a huge ass following. And I was like, that's cool, I help a lot of people get sober now. In fact, I don't help anybody get fucking sober. I might say something that sparks something in them, and they go, fuck, I relate to that. I know what it's like to be sobbing in a fucking Motel 6, doing fucking rails or doing fucking injecting, while the hooker's passed out on the fucking bed, shades fucking closed, sobbing begging God to have some lightning bolt break through the fucking roof and strike me dead because nothing's going to make me stop. But now all of a sudden I can't stop using. I mean, that's the insanity of our addiction. And to look back and to see what you pulled yourself out of and what you pulled yourself through is amazing. It is inspiring. That's why your story is so inspiring, because what you have the ability to do is to say this one thing to somebody out there that they go, holy fucking, it lights a fire in them, and it lights a belief in them, and it lights into them that I can fucking do this. And that's what it's all about, and that's where it really came to me, of giving it back, of showing that, man, the more that I shared my story with others, the more that I talked to others, the more that it just helped others. I don't know how or don't know why, but it did. Cool. And that's what it was about. And it's amazing then when you realize that in the ultimate end, all we want is kindness. We don't want to be alone. And if you find a friend along the way, that's amazing. Create the life that you want. That's awesome. And to do it clear-headed and to remember it the whole entire time is even the best feeling. Then you get to actually enjoy it. So it is 10 o'clock, and that is my time. So I do greatly appreciate you guys sitting out there and listening to me blabble along. Hopefully maybe you got something out of it. And with that, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I went live on Facebook? No, actually.